The first clue that the caves were larger in Dashwood's time were the 22 Steps poem and the Churchill poem, with the latter using the word maze, and the phrase, intricate and winding ways. The caves today are not the way Churchill describes them in the past. There is only one long passage running from the entrance to the inner temple, with some caverns along its path. In The Dashwoods of West Wickham, published in 1987, the 11th Baronet produces the following quote, which he attributes to Caroline Libby Powys.
Near the middle of the excavation, there is a small pool, which is now crossed by stepping stones, but formerly it is said it would only be passed in a boat. The excavation terminates in a large lofty circular cavern, with a vaulted roof, in which is a hook for suspending a lamp or chandelier. Here, according to local tradition, the Hellfire Club occasionally held its meetings.
The following quote can be found in the Chambers Book of Days online.
About halfway down the hill is an excavation, a quarter of a mile long, and running under the church, which is also said to have been his lordship's work, but more probably he only adapted it to his fancy. It is entered by a massive door, formed in an artificial ruin, and consists of a series of lofty caves, connected by a passage, which is in some places divided into 2 or 3 parts by huge pillars of chalk, left to support the roof. Near the middle of the excavation, there is a small pool, which is now crossed by stepping stones, but formerly, it is said, it could only be passed in a boat. The excavation terminates in a large, lofty, circular cavern, with a vaulted roof, in which is a hook for suspending a lamp or chandelier. Here, according to local tradition, the Mednam Club occasionally held its meetings. And certainly, if its president wished to be near his home, this spot would be convenient, being only half a mile distant. So also, if the club desired special secrecy, no place could be more suitable, seeing that when the door at the entrance was barred from within, and the pool, which the monks called the Styx, was crossed in their boat, their doings in this cavern would be as secure from interruption from the rest of the world, as if they were actually being enacted in the infernal regions themselves.
The author has been to the caves at least 3 times, and he did not observe any huge pillars of chalk, nor did he find the river Styx to be anywhere near the middle of the excavation. The river Styx is close to the end of the cave's singular tunnel, and at its deepest point. If the Chambers Book of Days report is reliable, then it does lend credence to the idea that the caves were larger in the past. McCormick's observation of the blocked-up secret passage is an indication that someone has deliberately prevented access to a part of the caves, or perhaps parts of the caves, thereby reducing their overall size. The obvious question is, who concealed parts of West Wickham caves, and why? Had some of the tunnels become unsafe, and therefore needed to have access points to them blocked? Or were the Dashwoods trying to cover something up, to conceal something? And why is the 11th Baronet's 1987 version of the report missing the parts about some of the caves being supported by huge pillars of chalk, and the excavation being a quarter of a mile long? Donald McCormick says the following with regard to the blocked-up secret passage entrance mentioned in his book.
Whether this was the beginning of the secret passage of legend it is impossible to say, but, if it were blocked up, this was certainly not carried out during the past 100 years.
The author reasons that the evidence presented by McCormick in 1958, and the Chambers Book of Days report published in 1864, would indicate that work to reduce the cave's size was, at the latest, carried out during the first half of the 19th century. But if the Dashwoods were trying to hide parts of the caves, then why do they allow a voice recording to be heard in the miner's cave, mentioning
a hidden opening, sealed with chalk blocks,
which would surely allude to the blocked-up entrance that is currently hidden at the rear of the children's cave? Close to Franklin's Cave, at the XXII location, is the previously discussed plaque that advertises the 22 Steps poem and the Churchill poem, that both allude to a secret passage or secret passages in the caves. Why would the Dashwoods be advertising the possibility of these secret passages to the public? Perhaps there is a ritualistic element to having hundreds of people reading about secret passages, and then having them unwittingly walk past the passage's concealed entrances on a regular basis, year in and year out. Maybe it's the Dashwoods' officially sanctioned secret tunnel mystery, to pull people's attention away from something they'd prefer them not to see. Or perhaps they are just hiding the truth in plain sight for another purpose. Before the author gives his view on the reason behind the 22 Steps poem's presence in the caves, first consider the 18th century legend of Suki. Suki was a barmaid employed at the George and Dragon public house in West Wickham village. She was lured into the caves under false pretenses and murdered there. To this day, her ghost is supposed to haunt the caves. But the author has spoken to the landlady of the Swan public house in West Wickham village. She told him the Suki story did not exist until the 1970s, and that it was a complete fabrication. Even McCormick's rather studious and thorough 1958 book fails to mention the legend of Suki, despite considering local legends. So who invented the Suki legend with its connection to the caves? The author holds the view that the 22 Steps poem and the Suki legend function primarily as marketing devices that result in financial gain for the Dashwood family. Although the author has found no proof the Dashwoods created the Suki legend, or that it is even based on a true story, they appear to have co-opted it from its unknown origin, as it has been reproduced on a plaque inside the caves, in much the same way the 22 Steps poem and the Churchill poem have been. By comparing the 22 Steps poem to the Suki legend, the author is not implying that the tunnel stories are purely literary fabrications. He wishes to state that irrespective of the legitimacy of their respective origins, both have been used to the same ends. This same marketing ploy could explain the voice recording advertising
A hidden opening, sealed with chalk blocks.
In the caves. Prior to the caves' public reopening in 1951, the Dashwoods must have made sure that any entrance points to any secret parts of the caves were either blocked up or hidden from view, if they hadn't been blocked up or hidden already. This would explain why McCormick's blocked-up tunnel entrance is now hidden at the rear of the children's cave, behind display mannequins, artificial stalagmites, and a metal screen. The author is reasoning that the Dashwoods have purposefully modified the cave's interior, so that it would be impossible for any visitor to correctly identify any entrance to any secret passage. Therefore, the advertisements of the secret passages function as an attractor. For people enjoy solving mysteries, and an unsolvable mystery can have an enduring fascination, and that enduring fascination has a market value. A similar marketing tactic was probably employed by the second baronet, when he allegedly claimed that his sole reason for employing locals to dig out the caves and build West Wickham Road was to provide them with employment.
My sole reason for making the road is the welfare of the villagers. I am determined that they shall have employment.
The author can't help but think that he was using a false philanthropic overture, perhaps as a means of self-promotion. That's not to say Sir Francis wasn't a charitable and altruistic man, but it does seem a little excessive to dig out a hill, build a road, and then claim you only did it for the locals' well-being. In the case of the 11th baronet, his motives are clear. The purpose of the Hellfire Caves project, to use his own words, was about securing the future. The caves were made safe for public viewing by him, at great personal financial cost, and at great personal risk to him and his employees. The reason for the 11th baronet taking such risks was to provide a source of income for his descendants, to maintain the Dashwood estate, and to preserve the Dashwood legacy. The viewer is probably wondering where these secret tunnel entrances might be. We know that there is a blocked-up tunnel entrance at the rear of the children's cave, and that it is hidden from view, due to the cavern's curved shape, display mannequins, artificial stalagmites, and a metal screen. It would seem that the method employed is to turn the area surrounding the secret tunnel entrance into an individual cavern, to fill that cavern with interesting obstructions, and then to install a metal screen in front of the cavern to keep the public at a distance. Potentially, every individual cavern in the Hellfire Caves could have a secret tunnel entrance hidden in it somewhere, as they all meet with the aforementioned criteria to some degree. But the two that stand out as the most likely candidates, would be the river Styx, and the Cursing Well. Both have a curved shape with their ends hidden from view, both are filled with artificial stalagmites, and both have metal screens that make seeing into the cave difficult. The images you are now looking at, were taken with a digital camera, whose lens was small enough to poke through each cavern's metal screen. It has occurred to the author, that another way of hiding a secret tunnel entrance, would be to obscure it from public view by covering it with an artificial wall. There is a significant amount of restoration work throughout the cave's entire structure, especially at the Children's Cave, Franklin's Cave, and the Steward's Cave. But, the area that stands out as the most likely candidate for containing a concealed tunnel entrance, would be the short section of tunnel adjacent to Franklin's Cave. There are artificial walls here, and they are significantly large. The area is poorly lit, and might be overlooked by a visitor. The author wonders why such substantial structures needed to be built, and what might lie behind them.